Hi guys, welcome back aboard my floating home Athena. If you're familiar with my channel, you'll know that I've spent the last almost 5 years refitting Athena, and then last week I finally got to move aboard. And I gotta say, it is a little bit weird to be living here after having been working on her for so long. I'm living here in the forward cabin while I continue refitting the aft end of the boat, and please excuse the mess in here, I'm still getting settled. There are a couple of things that would dramatically improve the quality of life here aboard Athena. One of them is noise, and the other one is light switches. Right now, before I go to bed, I have to get out a screwdriver and loosen the connection for the lighting to the bus bar out in the forward cabin. It's a little bit of a tedious process, not super user-friendly. Now, I'm not sure I can do anything about the light switches this week because I'm waiting for a Seazone box to show up, and that's stuck in some kind of shipping snafu, so it might not get here before the weekend. But I can do something about the noise, or at least I hope I can. Down there is a fan heater of the model Real Heat. I've got a similar one out in the forward cabin, and there are two 12mm fans on the back of that, and those do produce a good amount of noise. On the advice of you guys, I picked up a couple of alternatives, but before we go ahead and mount the first one of those, let's grab some before measurements. Right where my head is when I am sleeping, if I'm not talking, we're sitting at around 56, 57 decibels. And it looks like we have a delta T of around 10 degrees Celsius. I don't know how interesting the delta T is going to be, because while I'm assuming the flow is constant, the ambient temperature is not going to be the same, and also the coolant temperature is going to vary a little bit. But yeah, at least now we have a measurement. I've got the specs for all of the fans here. Over here are the stock fans. This one is this one over here, and this one is this one over here. The stock fan moves by far the most air, 174 cubic meters per hour, but it is also by far the loudest at 38 decibels. I'm hoping one of these two other fans will move enough air that I can pull the heat out of the fan heater, but that it's going to be more quiet. Remember that decibel is not a linear scale, so a reduction of, for instance, 8 decibels from the stock fan to this fan over here is, well, quite a big reduction in noise. I've got the first of the two new fans mounted. They are running, and they're pretty quiet. Measured at the same spot as before without me talking, we're at around 49 decibels. And in terms of delta T, we are right around 10 degrees Celsius again, but this time around the coolant is warmer. It should be a lot easier to get a higher delta T if the temperature of the coolant is higher. That's why I said that I don't think the delta T is going to be a super useful metric in my setup here, because I can't really control the temperature of the coolant. Let's try and switch to this super fancy, super quiet one. That's the first of them on, and that is the second one. It is so quiet in here now. I can't really hear the fan. I measured and it's 38 decibels in here. If I turn off the fan, then it's 33 decibels. It's a kind of windy day outside and the fan in the saloon is on. So that's why I think the ambient noise in here is kind of high. The delta T for the super quiet fan was around 8 degrees Celsius. So, yeah, what I think I will do is to swap out the stock fan and the fan heater here in the saloon for these ones, and leave the super quiet ones in the saloon. Ah, that is so much better. Of course, now I can hear the circulation pump on the heater, but that'll get solved when I build a little soundproof enclosure and put around that. So yeah, the noise level here inside of the boat is definitely much better now. I'm very excited to see how those two super quiet fans are going to work out here in the forward cabin. If I don't wake up freezing in the middle of the night, I'll consider them a big success. I made it through the night without freezing, so the new fans definitely work, but I do feel like the heat distribution here inside of the boat is not as even as it was with the stock fans with the higher airflow. I'm curious to see how the new fans are going to perform next week, because we're supposed to have a few days with temperatures below freezing, so that'll be kind of interesting. But let's head over and check on the progress aboard Obelix. I haven't started cleaning the exterior yet, but I have dropped off the Dodger to have that cleaned. Things are a little bit messy here down below. I've prepared to fix one of the things I want to fix before selling her, and I have also gotten started cleaning. I need to do a ton of cleaning here inside of the boat, but I might as well wait until I'm done fixing the things I want to fix. At the top of my want to fix list, at least for today, is this broken foot pump in the galley. I think I've been through 3 of those manual foot pumps before I finally decided not to use the tank anymore, and they all just started leaking on me. So instead of replacing the manual foot pump with another manual foot pump, I'm going to replace it with a small little electric pump. To go along with that, I have picked up this little faucet. It has a little built-in switch you might be able to hear clicking. It's a simpler version of the pressurized water setups you'll typically find aboard boats, but I think a solution like this will work well for a smaller boat like Obelix. I've got the little inline pump down there, and then that is connected to the little faucet, which I still need to connect the wires to. Well, let's take this bad boy for a spin. Beautiful. It's super convenient to be able to just pull the sink out to have better access to the locker beneath the sink. It's also super convenient to have that little electric pump because I want to empty out and clean the water tank. It's only 60 liters, and because it's rather small, I stopped using it about 4 or 5 years ago because it was easier just to carry back and forth little 2-liter bottles. This stuff should do a great job of cleaning out the water tank. It'll kill any bacteria and it'll also disinfect the entire system. You're supposed to use 1 of these bottles for every 10 liter of water in the tank. Then you leave it sitting there for an hour, and then you rinse the tank 3 times. But the water is shut off here on the pontoons because it's winter, so I'll hold off on cleaning the tank until I'm cleaning the exterior of the boat. To clean the exterior, especially the top sides, I want to put Obelix up on the hard, and I want to use the crane here behind me for that. It's free to use this nifty crane, and I believe it's rated at 5 tons, which is more than enough for Obelix. I've used the crane before to pull Obelix out of the water, and it's super convenient that I don't have to arrange anything with a yard or anything like that. I can just do it myself. But there is a crucial part missing. I think that part is supposed to get here next week, but for now, the crane is useless. One of the other things I'd like to fix here aboard Obelix before selling her are these lids for the cockpit lockers. This one is by far the one that's in the worst condition. It's got a little bit of rut up in this corner up here, but yeah, they look pretty horrible. They already looked pretty horrible when I bought Obelix about 8 or 9 years ago, so it's a marvel they've lasted this long. But let's go ahead and make some templates and cut some new plywood. I could, of course, just bring the lids with me and use those to cut the new plywood, but it's gonna rain later today, so I would much rather leave them in place. I ended up removing the old lids or hatches anyways, just to make sure that the new ones fit before I start sealing them. I've marked the holes for the hinges, and yeah, the new ones are a pretty good fit. They're basically an exact match of the old ones. What's kind of impressive about the old ones is the fact that they may have been sealed on the top at, well, some point, but it looks like the bottom of them has never been sealed. I can reuse all of the old hardware, including this doohickey, which is for the tiller pilot. When I purchased Obelix, these doohickeys here were missing from the aft hatch, so this has never been able to lock. I will see if I can find some of these, but yeah. As should be painfully obvious, there are plenty of things here about Obelix that needs a little bit of a loving hand, and while the hinges may very well end up being one of those little jobs for the next owner of Obelix. There's this frame that's cracked here at the companionway hatch. Also, the washboards are looking a little bit tired. There's a handful of old, kind of ugly looking repairs to the gel coat. The hatch could use a little bit of sanding, some fairing compound, and a bit of paint. My goal is not to put lipstick on a pig and try and fool somebody into thinking that Obelix is a brand new boat. because she's not. She's an old boat, and I've been living here full time for 6 years. I've been wearing down the interior, and I haven't fixed some of the issues on the exterior of the boat. So yeah, it's an old boat. There are things that needs fixing. Before I sell Obelix, I want to do the next owner the courtesy of just cleaning her as thoroughly as I possibly can, fixing the things that I know that are wrong, and especially the things that I know could maybe lead to some kind of accident, like for instance the hatches or lids out in the cockpit, because, well, if they're rotten, somebody could poke their leg through there and get hurt, and I certainly don't want that. But again, Obelix is an old boat, so there might be stuff hiding somewhere that I don't know about. Like for instance the engine, that's a little bit of an unknown, right? I had the engine pulled about 4 or 5 years ago and serviced by a marine mechanic, and it looks like it's in good shape. It starts up right away, but it is from 1973, which is pretty freaking old. So there's no knowing what kind of gremlins are hiding in there. It might be fine for another 10 years, or it might blow up tomorrow. I just don't know. But let's hurry up and get the hatches or lids back aboard Athena before it starts raining again. It's a little bit silly, but I would feel better about selling Obelix if she was in pristine condition. If I had just finished rebuilding the interior, if I'd just painted the exterior, if I'd popped in a brand new engine, if I'd replaced the standing rigging, all of that stuff. But I don't have the time. We're leaving in roughly 141 days, and also if I did all of that, she would end up costing a fortune, way more than anybody would want to pay. I'm only gonna list Obelix for sale here in Denmark because I don't want anybody traveling a long way to see her and then get disappointed because she is an old boat. But yeah, there are also actually a couple of interested potential buyers here in Denmark already. I'm not gonna show anybody Obelix before I'm at the very least done cleaning the interior, but then we'll see what happens. There's a little bit of an annoying design feature in these hatches, and that's the fact that the seal that runs along the bottom of it crosses right over where the 2 nuts on each of the hinges are located. So I'm going to have to countersink this a little bit. If I remove about 5 millimeters, that should be perfect. These holes are for the attachment point of the tiller pilot. And with that out of the way, there's only one more thing I need to take care of before I can seal the plywood, and that's this area right here. Just as with the nuts underneath the seal on the outboard side of the hatch, well, we have the exact same problem here. I need to countersink these little doodads here so that the seal can run over them. Stupid design, but that's the way it is. And just like that, the doohickey sits nice and flush with the surface. Now before I coat these with epoxy, I'm just gonna break the edges here so they're not as sharp. I was kind of surprised to see how long the original hatches had lasted, considering that they weren't that well sealed. Simply going with primer and paint would probably make these last for a really long time, but I've got epoxy right here, so I might as well just go the extra mile. I'll apply 3 coats of epoxy, wet on tacky, then I guess I've got the option of either varnishing or painting, but the outer veneer on this is not super nice, so I think I'm leaning towards painting, but either way, these are gonna last basically forever. I'm heating the resin in my little homemade epoxy heating box here. For hardener, I'm gonna go with 205 because that's all I've got, even though it is nice and warm here inside of the boat. I could also apply a single layer of fiberglass to these to have better impact resistance, but all I've got is 600 gram, which is way too heavy for something like that. So yeah, we're just gonna stick with the epoxy, and I think that'll be perfectly fine. Heating the resin lowers the viscosity, which means it's gonna be a little bit easier to apply. Having it be just a little bit above room temperature makes a big difference. Once my foam roller here starts sucking up epoxy, it's gonna start kicking off pretty soon, so I don't have unlimited working time. When it comes to sealing, it is all about the dry film thickness. You need a certain thickness of material to seal, whether it's epoxy or primer. There needs to be a certain thickness, so you might be tempted to just kind of shovel the epoxy on there in thick layers, but that is going to lead to a very uneven surface. My experience is that you're better served applying multiple thinner coats, as that's going to lead to less sanding. Speaking of, that is the first coat. I'll let the first coat gel until it is tacky when I touch it, but it doesn't come off on my glove. With the 205, which is the fast hardener, and the temperature I've got here inside of the boat, that should happen within an hour or two. So yeah, let's fast forward a little bit. It's been about an hour and a half, and this is exactly what I'm looking for. Tacky, yet firm. That is basically the second coat applied. I should be able to get the third coat on there tonight, and then tomorrow we should be ready for a light little bit of sanding. Good morning, guys. It is Sunday morning. I started out today by doing a quick little dry fit aboard Obelix to make sure that all the holes I've drilled lined up. And seeing the new hatches in place made me absolutely sure that I want to paint these. I don't want to varnish them. The outer veneer is just not nice enough. If I varnish these, I'm also going to leave the next owner with a lot of maintenance that they may not want. And I've never done non-skid in varnish, so that's a little bit of an unknown. So yeah, I think I'm just better off sticking with paint. It got kind of late last night before I got the third coat on here, so while the epoxy is not tacky anymore, it's still a little bit too soft for sanding. It's just gonna gum up the paper, so I'm gonna have to wait until tomorrow to sand these. I've got a feeling this week's video is gonna end up being a little bit jumbled and unorganized, and I'm sorry about that. There's been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes this week, and some of the stuff that's been going on behind the scenes is really good news. Like, for instance, Ava and I have finally placed an order for all of the cushions here inside of the boat, which we're very excited about. I mean, Ava's probably a little bit more excited about that than I am, but still they're very excited about that. And yeah, so there's been a lot of stuff going on, and yeah, I'm sorry about the quality of this week's video. I'll get back to my regular self next week. Before I forget, because I'm sure somebody's gonna mention it, I have brushed the holes here with epoxy. The plywood is only 12 millimeters thick, so it's pretty easy to get in there with a brush, so that's why I didn't go for the drill fill drill method. And yeah, in terms of next week, I should be able to finish these hatches, get those installed on Obelix. Hopefully the crane will be fixed so we can put Obelix up on the heart, get the bottom scraped, apply some bottom paint, maybe give the top sides a light polish. That should be a lot of fun. And yeah, my parents are swinging by later today to help me clean the inside of Obelix, so hopefully by the beginning of next week, the inside will be all nice and clean. I need to finish editing and start uploading this video before my parents get here so I can partake in the glorious cleaning of Obelix. So yeah, that is going to be the end of this week's video. I hope to see all of you guys back here aboard Athena and Obelix next week for yet more DIY fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!